The intersection of economic hegemony, national supremacy, and racist supremacy with the secrecy surrounding ufology and suppression of energy technology is a speculative but intriguing topic. It involves examining how power structures, ideology, and control mechanisms might influence the dissemination of concealment of knowledge and technology. Here's a detailed exploration of how these ideologies could fuel such secrecy. Economic hegemony, control of resources and markets. Economic hegemony refers to the dominance of certain economies and corporations over global markets. Entities that control fossil fuels and traditional energy sources have a vested interest in maintaining their market share. The introduction of advanced or alternative energy technologies could disrupt these markets, leading to economic instability for dominant players. Suppression of disruptive technologies. To maintain economic hegemony, powerful corporations or governments might suppress technology that could decentralize energy production or reduce dependence on fossil fuels. This suppression could be justified under the guise of national security or economic stability. Monopolization of power. By controlling the narrative around ufology and advanced technologies, economic hegemonies can monopolize knowledge. This control ensures that only select entities benefit from technological advancements, reinforcing their dominance. National supremacy. National security and secrecy. National supremacy involves the belief in the superiority and dominance of one nation over others. Governments might classify information about UFOs and advanced energy technologies as a matter of national security to prevent adversaries from gaining an advantage. Now the AI's cooking, right? Now we're getting somewhere. Now it's just chugging, spitting this stuff out. It's obvious now, right? It's clarity. It's like, so, like, how did people not see this? Technological arms race. In the context of national supremacy, the position of advanced technologies, including those derived from extraterrestrial research, could be seen as a strategic asset. Secrecy ensures that rival nations do not acquire or replicate these technologies. Patriotic narratives. Nationalistic narratives might frame the suppression of certain technologies as a patriotic duty, which it does. For example, the idea that revealing advanced energy technologies could weaken the position of the nation on the global stage might be used to justify secrecy. Which is a perfect segue. Racist supremacy. Exclusionary ideologies. Racist supremacy involves the belief in the superiority of one race over others. This ideology can manifest in the control and distribution of knowledge and technology, ensuring that only certain racial or ethnic groups benefit. Fear of others. Racist ideology often involve fear of the other, whether it be races, cultures, or even extraterrestrial beings. This fear can be leveraged to justify the suppression of technology that might empower marginalized groups or disrupt existing power structures, such as the IMF, the World Banks, right? We read the oil website, was it oilprice.com or some stupid name like that? I can't remember if that was it. It's something like that. That said that that the World Bank was not going to let these nuclear giants come through because they would lose their investment on the fossil fuel market. I think that we've seen that undone since I've read that, because now we're seeing these massive nuclear things. But it was crazy that, like last year I was reading all these giant banking cabals coming together and making decisions for the whole freaking world. And it was these banking people and their investments and their quarterly stock, yada yada yada, which is impossible. It's mathematically impossible to keep up. You cannot keep infinite growth on a finite planet. It's impossible. It's stupid. And these are the people that are controlling everything, and they're trying to maintain that scarcity. That's how they can maintain their power. So, conspiracy theories. Racist supremacy can fuel conspiracy theories that blame marginalized groups or global elites for suppressing advanced technologies. These narratives also include anti Semitic tropes or xenophobic ideas about secret societies controlling knowledge. Yeah, a lot of this Nazi stuff says that like Jews are in control of everything and that they're just like super bad, but I really haven't found that much like evidence of like any particular religion. Like the people that are in power, that are these billionaires or in like these military people, they claim to be whatever religion. It doesn't matter what they say. They're not anything. They don't believe in anything. They're like nihilists. Like they say that they're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever, but they don't believe in that. They are these elites, this 1% that I'm talking about, they don't believe in any sort of God like we do. Like they believe they are God. So, mechanisms of secrecy and suppression, classification and secrecy laws. Governments might classify information about UFOs and advanced energy technologies under national security laws, making it illegal to disclose such information. Disinformation campaigns to maintain control. Entities might spread disinformation or debunk legitimate research, which we might have seen. Remember those Korean people who kept on, like the Korean research team, who kept on saying that they were inventing all this crazy stuff, and then everybody tried to cut their funding and said that they were making it up, and they were like, oh, well, by the way, we have another one. So, or all the people that said that hydrogen-powered cars or water-powered car, which water is part hydrogen, are possible, and, they basically, like, all died, or just mysteriously disappeared. And then we have jets, Navy jets, that run on ocean water. So how is it that we have Navy jets that can run on ocean water, but everybody that says that a car can do it just goes missing? So, yeah, debunking legitimate research, I think, does happen. And I think if they'll try to cut their funding, too, and take away their money, that's, like, probably the biggest way, is just take away the money so that the researcher can't do their work. And majority of people in research are only there for, like, a very small amount of time. Unfortunately, our research field in science is very corporatized, very profit-driven, very immoral, unethical, and the research people that are in it just despise the whole process. It's kind of like our healthcare process, really. So, entities might spread disinformation or debunk legitimate research, creating confusion and skepticism around ufology and alternative energy technologies. Also say that we saw this with the COVID vaccine. Type in the words CIA, Philippines COVID vaccine, and you'll see that we had an American taxpayer-funded disinformation campaign from the CIA to try to have the Philippines not take the COVID vaccine so more of them would die so that we could blame it on China. And now we have scientists coming out and saying that it wasn't a lab leak, while the CIA is doubling down saying that it was a lab leak, which is really convenient that they want to say that. So that's basically the CIA party line, is that it's a lab leak. So, corporate control. Corporations with significant economic power might acquire patents for advanced technologies and then shelve them to prevent market distribution or disruption. This practice, known as patent trolling, ensures that only technologies that align with their economic interests are developed. That's very fascinating. I'll put all my money on that right there, as well as some other things that you can bet your dollar that that's going on. 100%. Culture and social stigma. By stigmatizing ufologies and certain scientific inquiries as pseudoscience or conspiracy theories, dominant groups can marginalize researchers and discourage legitimate investigation. So that's kind of, I mean, not exactly, but that's kind of even what we were seeing in that first question that I had asked this same AI. Examples and case studies. The Cold War and UFO secrecy. During the Cold War, both the USA and USSR were deeply invested in gaining technological superiority. Reports of UFOs were often classified and investigations were shrouded in secrecy, partly due to fears that the other side might gain an advantage. Suppression of free energy claims. Various inventors, such as Nikola Tesla, have claimed to develop free energy devices, which he tried to sell to everybody, but nobody would do it because of money. Many of these claims have been met with skepticism, and some inventors have faced legal and financial challenges, leading to speculation about suppression by economic hegemonies. Eco-fascism and environmental control. Some far-right groups have adopted environmental rhetoric to promote exclusionary policies that might argue that advanced energy technology should be reserved for certain groups, reinforcing racist and supremacist ideologies. So, interestingly, there was a Five Eyes member who went on the radio recently and said this exact thing. I mean, he didn't say the far right part, but he said that Five Eyes can't let out this alternative energy, all of these different technologies, because we're just too barbaric, we're too brutal, we're just a bunch of monkeys and we can't handle it, is what he said. Which, they're the ones that are making this institutionalized supremacy. If you're number one, the only thing that other people can do is try to fight you. So you're setting yourself up to be fought by having a supremacist ideology and not wanting to cooperate. So that's exactly what was going on. We'll move on here, because for time's sake, I will move on. Conclusion. The ideologies of economic hegemony, national supremacy, and racist supremacy can fuel the secrecy surrounding ufology and suppression of energy technology through mechanisms of control, fear, and exclusion. By maintaining control over knowledge and technology, dominant groups can reinforce their power and prevent disruptions to existing power structures. While these intersections are often speculative, they highlight the complex way in which ideology can influence the dissemination and concealment of knowledge and technology. So we'll kind of talk, or just like reflect really briefly on the disruption part of the AI market, of the AI crash, of when DeepSeek came out and we saw the AI market crash. Some people would say that that was because of DeepSeek. Other people would say that that was because the AI market was over valued in America, which it definitely was. That's the correct answer, is that it was overvalued. So yeah, like as far as disruptions, you can see how like a new technology comes out and all of these American companies, they lost 25 years in gains overnight. This is exactly what we're talking about. All of these people want to be number one rather than cooperate, and it's setting the stage for war, really. And it expands to so many different ways. This ideology that they're having expands to so many different ways, and part of it is alternative energy and ufology and all of that, but also the geopolitical nature of it, that we will never have world peace by making everybody else starve to death. They're never going to be okay with that. Just end of story. But these I-5 people and these colonial superpowers believe that only white, rich intelligence officers or whatever can handle this power that they're talking about, all these technologies that they have, which I think is bullshit. They're the ones that are misusing it. They're the ones that are the psychopaths and the sadists. not the majority of people. Who are they to say? That's their narcissistic, sick mind talking, really. So speaking of narcissistic, sick mind, that was kind of a cool segue. I had asked the AI, explain decolonizing your mind. So those people have a colonized mind. How can you decolonize your mind? If anything, we're kind of talking about how ufology and ET even lead to decolonizing your mind. I'm like typing it as I'm saying it. So how does like ufology lead to decolonizing your mind? Be a really interesting question, because they're parallel to one another. Decolonizing your mind is a concept rooted in post-colonial theory and critical pedagogy aimed at challenging and dismantling the internalized ideologies, beliefs, and systems of oppression that have been imposed by colonial powers. This process involves critically examining and unlearning the ways in which colonial thinking has shaped our perceptions, values, and behaviors. Here's a detailed explanation of what it means to decolonize your mind. So it's going to obviously talk about it, but I'll just say briefly that, I was saying how for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we've had people in power that try to control the way that everybody else thinks. And that can be called like brainwashing or mind control, and all these different forms. And part of that is raising people from a young age and telling them that they're lesser, that they can't do that they don't have the ability or whatever. And after you're raised to believe that you're lesser than other people, that's something that you internalize, and you have to unlearn that. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is unlearning the brainwashing of the slave masters that they have raised our children and us to believe. So how do we do that? Understanding colonialism and its legacy. Historical context. Colonialism refers to the practice of acquiring and maintaining colonies or dependencies by a foreign power, often involving the exploitation of resources, labor, and cultures. The legacy of colonialism includes economic inequality, cultural erasure, and systemic racism. Cultural and mental colonization. Beyond physical and economic domination, colonialism also involves the imposition of the colonizer's culture, language, and values. This can lead to the internalization of these values by the colonized, resulting in a form of mental colonization. So we've gone beyond physical domination of the military. We've gone beyond economic domination of the IMF and the banks and all of that. And now we're more towards the mental colonization and mental attack of people that also kind of started with these billionaires, but has been going on for a long time. You study Machiavellian stuff. That's where we get the name of it, of how to control other people. That these representatives, that's what they see in themselves as being these supremacist god kings that are born to lead and nobody else is fit to lead. And I think that that's such BS, and that majority of men, and not just men, I say men as a whole, as majority of humans cannot take care of themselves very well. So how is it that another human is supposed to rule another human being? That's, and especially to say that they're like a total representation, or that they, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, they have to come and learn about the other person to represent them. They're not just born to lead. We fought a whole war over this, like multiple wars, really, when you think about it. At least 3, maybe 4. So, internalized oppression, internalized racism. This occurs when individuals from marginalized groups adopt the racist beliefs and attitudes of the dominant culture, leading to self-devaluation and the devaluation of their own culture. Kind of how during the African Holocaust, it was African people selling their own people out. And today, with the mass deportations, we have Hispanic people selling out their own community for money, to deport other people. So we see the same sort of thing happen today. Cultural inferiority complex. Colonized people may come to view their own culture, traditions, and knowledge systems as inferior to those of colonizers, leading to a loss of cultural identity and pride. So, not only that, but they don't believe that they can resist, so they don't. If they have an inferiority complex, then they wake up thinking that there's no way that they can ever take hold of the situation and have sovereignty. Decolonizing the mind. Critical awareness. The first step in decolonizing your mind is developing a critical awareness of how colonial ideologies have shaped your thoughts and behaviors. This involves questioning the dominant narratives and recognizing the ways in which they perpetuate inequality and oppression. Reclaiming indigenous knowledge. Decolonizing the mind involves valuing and reclaiming indigenous knowledge systems, languages, and cultural practices that were marginalized or erased by colonial powers, which is a lot of what this podcast has been doing. If you're noticing that a lot of this whole podcast has been decolonizing the mind, which I'm pretty proud of. So, challenging Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism is the practice of viewing the world from a European or Western perspective, often at the expense of other cultures. Decolonizing your mind requires challenging this bias and recognizing the value of diverse perspectives and ways of knowing and living. So, I've kind of talked about how, when Amazon, MIT went down there, and I talked about this last year, found the Terra Preta, and they're like, oh, wow, we finally discovered that these native people were using this advanced process to make advanced fertile dirt with bacteria. I can't believe that they were doing this whole time. Well, they were doing it even without you coming and acknowledging it. But it only took some, basically white Western Eurocentric people to come and put that on the books for us to acknowledge it as being valuable or practical. And now we're looking at taking that and bringing it to the rest of the world. The Terra Preta and that whole process. So it just goes to show that the Terra Preta could save the whole world. We're about to go into a massive food failure, all around I've had some articles saved about this. I think I've talked about it, but we're looking at massive global food crop failures and possibly global starvation, on top of the fact that we're deporting all of our workers, our field workers, our water cycles falling apart, the soil is degrading, and our journals are saying that our soil, we only have a couple yields left before we won't have food anymore. So we're going to have to spread that Terra Preta stuff around the whole world. Well, it's been there the whole time. We just never would use it. So this Eurocentric mentality was holding us back from something that could save the whole world and feed the whole planet. But is that something that the people in charge even want to do? That's another question. But I just wanted to point that out about the whole Terra Preta thing. So, practical steps to decolonize your mind. Education and learning. Engage with literature, history, and art from colonized and marginalized perspectives. This can help counteract the dominant narratives and provide a more balanced and understanding of history and culture. Language reclamation. Language is a powerful tool of cultural identity. Learning and using indigenous or ancestral language can be a form of resistance against cultural erasure. Community engagement. Participate in community efforts to preserve and promote indigenous cultures and traditions. This can involve attending cultural events, supporting local artisans, and engaging in community activism. Self-reflection. Regularly reflect on your own beliefs and behaviors to identify and challenge any internalized colonial attitudes. This can involve journaling, discussion with others, and seeking feedback from trusted individuals. I would say this is probably one of the most important parts as you begin your journey of decolonizing your mind, because as you learn and look at yourself, you will realize that, and this is all people, not just anybody in particular, that they have racist things in their minds that they never even realized. Especially for me, growing up in the South, we get taught all sorts of crazy stuff, and you have to unlearn that as an adult. That's your job as an adult, to learn what is right and wrong. And that's probably the reason I say this is the most important thing, is because it's tough. It's really hard to do. Like, whenever you realize that you've accidentally been racist in some capacity, it's really bad. And especially like if you're not that type of person, that it feels bad is what I mean. So you reflecting on this sort of stuff is challenging but extremely important. And that's like the only way you can really grow as a person, is challenging yourself. And just because somebody, accidentally says something racist without knowing it, like, for example, I got gypped. I had spent the majority of my life not knowing that had anything to do with gypsies, or that was like a racist term or a derogatory term. But after I found out, I didn't use that term anymore. So that's just like one example of people using languages or having thoughts that are unintentionally racist that they're not even aware of, that they've been taught. So something that's very fascinating. Examples and influences of decolonizing your mind. Ngugi wa Thiong, the Kenyan writer and academic. Ngugi wa Thiong is a prominent advocate for decolonizing the mind. In his book, Decolonizing the Mind, The Politics of Language in African Culture, he argues for the importance of using indigenous languages as a means of reclaiming cultural identity and resisting colonial domination. Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator. Paulo Freire's work on critical pedagogy, in particular his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, emphasizes the importance of education as a tool for liberation and the need to challenge oppressive systems through critical thought and dialogue. I gotta get that book. That sounds awesome. That's extremely important. Had to get some tea. Okay. Challenges and criticisms. Resistance to change. Decolonizing the mind can be challenging due to the deep-seated nature of colonial ideologies and the resistance to change from those who benefit from the status quo.